Okay. Hi, everyone. Catherine Mattice here, founder and CEO of Stability Partners. And I was just asking Dr. Tana Session how to say her name to make sure I said it right. So hopefully I did.
You nailed it.
Okay, good. I like I said, Tana like Dana, real quick.
Yep.
So Tana, just so everybody else knows, you are the CEO and founder of TanaMSession.com, certified women minority business enterprise. You have over 30 years of human resources experience. And I love how you specialize in cultural engineering, facilitated experiences, and leadership and organizational development. And you have done some serious work in large global and domestic organizations with some change initiatives. And you have a book out called Working While Black, A Woman's Guide to Stop Being the Best Kept Secret.
Yes.
Did I get it all?
You got it.
I am super excited to chat with you. I saw you in one of our LinkedIn author meetings. I'm like, who's this person? I want to, and kind of stalked you a little bit on LinkedIn, and I am a huge fan. So thank you for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I really appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, awesome. So let's just jump in. And by the way, anybody listening, please do ask questions, chat with us, and we will, of course, get those answered. We'd love to interact with you. So tell me first about your book. And again, it's called Working While Black, A Woman's Guide to Stop Being the Best Kept Secret. So tell us about it.
Well, this is my fourth book, and it was the one that took me the longest to write. It took almost 2 years to complete the book. And I was actually encouraged to write the book by Dr. Lois Frankel. She's the New York Times bestselling author of Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. And, she shared with me that because of her work in that area, oftentimes when she would do speaking engagements or, different types of leadership development, she would have women who identify as Black ask her for advice on how to deal with certain things they were experiencing in the workplace. And to her credit, she said, honestly, I don't have that experience. So I'm not the best person. I can share with you what I think could work or what some strategies could potentially be, but they may not be effective because I identify as a white woman. And so she and I was on the board of her nonprofit, and she and I had a conversation over like a holiday dinner. And she said, Tana, based on your experience and based on the fact that you've already written some books and the fact that you do this work in diversity, I think you would be the best person to write a book like this. And of course I was like, no, 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 no. And she said, no, I really think it would be a great idea for you to write it. Just give it some thought. And so I did. And I was able to kind of outline some of the stories I would want to share about my own personal experience in corporate and what were some of the challenges I experienced. And then I decided to expand that beyond the experience of me and talk to other Black, powerful, successful women who either are in corporate still or perhaps have their own business and find out what were some of the issues that they experienced. And what I found was there was a common theme across all those experiences that we had. And a lot of ways that we dealt with them was also very common. And so I call it a guide because not only do I share our individual stories, but I also share the strategies that we put into place that empowered us to own our power, our truth, our healing, our worth, and ultimately our destiny in these spaces that weren't necessarily designed for us to succeed.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing some of those experiences that either yours or others that you had, because as a white woman myself, I want to learn and hear what your experiences have been like.
Yeah, so I think one of the common ones that I can think about is our credibility being questioned. So whether it's in a team meeting or if it's even being a lead on a project, having others question our authority, having others question our recommendations, having to prove above and beyond our areas of expertise. So always having that called into question, regardless of how much education you may have, how much experience you may have, how many certifications you may have. And oftentimes that's a strategy that we as people of color and Black people in particular will actually put into place to help us be successful and remove some of those barriers is we will go and get the extra certification.
And all the stuff. Yeah.
All the extra stuff to say, okay, what else can they put out there as a barrier for us in terms of success or opportunities that we can help eliminate? Oh, we got to get a new certification. Okay, we'll do that. But then in a lot of ways, Catherine, you feel like the goalpost is always being moved as well.
Yeah, I could see that. And by the way, we've got a lot of comments that people are excited to hear your strategies and hear this talk. So I'm not your only fan. You clearly have many. So could you share some of the strategies that, that are in your book? If this type of, if I feel like my experience is being questioned or and obviously for me, it might just be because I'm a woman as opposed to a person of color, but how might any of us, deal with that? How do we get that back?
Yeah. So one of the aspects I would call it is I have these different pillars. So Stop Being the Best Kept Secret is my executive coaching program that I trademarked and have been running for, almost 4 years now. And so there's different pillars to it. So own your power, your truth, your healing, your worth, and ultimately your destiny are the pillars. And I tell people you got to start with learning how to own your power. And that means taking your power back. So sometimes that means we have to forgive ourselves for maybe decisions that we've made along the way or choices that we've made in our career or in our personal lives that may have been stumbling blocks because we've all done that, right? So I've done that on a personal level as well as professionally. And then you have to also learn how to forgive others because that's some space that you don't want to take with you as you're looking to grow and develop and become successful. So sometimes you have to forgive people who may never ask for an apology. Maybe they don't feel like they've done anything wrong or that they're not due to apologize for anything because they feel very firm in their decision or in their choices as it relates to their interpersonal relationship with you. And again, be on a personal and professional level. I've had to deal with that on both sides. And then you have to understand that you are worthy of success. And success looks different for every single person. And so as a result of that, not comparing yourself to others is another aspect of owning your power, because sometimes we'll get stuck in imposter syndrome or that shoulda, woulda, coulda been me syndrome, when that may not be your destiny. That may not be your purpose. So everything that's glittery and gold for someone else, you don't know what chapter of their life they're in. You don't know how long it took for them to get to what that level of success that they're at. So instead of comparing yourself, you want to think about what is truly unique and personal and authentic to you, and then mapping out what success looks like from there.
You may have seen this. There was a viral video of Bill Gates going around. He gave a commencement speech at, not Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, the other one. He gave a commencement speech at Stanford University, and I know he's not, I'm a anti-bullying expert, so he's not the best example of a person. However, he said something in this speech that has really resonated with me, and I see it all the time, which was that the dots always connect. And so, he has this story about how he dropped out of college, but then he still was like attending the classes that he wanted to attend, just in the back. Nobody knew he was there. And he learned about calligraphy, which in turn helped him. He's the one who sort of realized that the font we're using on the computers really matters and all this stuff. And just this idea that dots connect. And I guess I heard a little bit of that from you too, that maybe those things that happened in the past were for a reason and they've gotten you to where you're at. And then, if you've made some bad decisions or made a wrong turn, it wasn't a wrong turn. It was just, it's going to get you where you're at. And I feel like I see that a lot. Like, okay, this is the dot that showed up 3 years ago and here it is now,
Hey, Auntie Oprah says that there are no accidents and everything is predestined. And we just have to be willing to lean into those experiences and be in the moment, right? So sometimes we're looking so far down the road that we can't appreciate the situation or the moment or the lesson that we're here to learn. And, Nelson Mandela said, I never lose. I either win or I learn. And that's what we have to take, that same type of attitude.
Yeah, I love all those types of quotes. So how have your experiences differed from being in these corporate organizations and leading them through change versus being an entrepreneur?
Well, I can tell you I have no regrets. And I tell my friends all the time, I'll do whatever it takes not to have to go back. So, I've been running my own business since 2014. And, there's been trials and tribulations and lessons I've learned along the way as well. And I've had some great wins, but I wouldn't exchange it for anything. Now, I was intentional when I did leave corporate America, where I had a plan. I gave myself 3 months to either write a book, have my first client, or have my first speaking engagement. And within 3 months, I was able to have all three.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yep. And I just felt like it was the universe responding to my desires, my manifestation. And again, just believing that I had more to offer to more people versus being tied to just one company. And I was challenged at that time because I was the head of HR, and different associations or organizations would ask me to speak on panels or to teach some of the things that I was doing in some of my roles, whether it was recruitment strategies for diversity or multi-generational workforce training. And I was doing some of these things what I considered to be on the side on my free time, whether it was on PTO or on the weekends or over the holidays. And I remember my CEO told me I had to make a choice. And I thought, wow, I said, this doesn't have anything to do with my job that I'm doing here as a head of HR. This is something else that I'm doing. And I thought, if there is a desire right now with me just really still having a full-time job of doing this, what could possibly happen when I don't have that as a barrier? And the universe has responded overwhelmingly.
Yeah, so when I started Civility Partners, I taught college for a long time, actually, more than half of Civility Partners' life still. And that same experience, like I was leaning on that money as a crutch. Yeah. And then as soon as I stopped teaching college, the very next, I had made a certain amount the year before between 50-50 Civility Partners and teaching. And the very next year I dropped teaching, and I made the same exact amount just from Civility Partners. Like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. Yeah. So I want to ask you about recruiting for diversity and first, let's talk about unconscious bias. I don't know if you've read the comments for our event here, but some people maybe don't have an understanding of unconscious bias. So I'm saying that politely. So, and I know not everybody does know anyway. So let's start there. What is unconscious bias?
So first and foremost, I want to say every single one of us are guilty of it. So I don't want anyone listening today to think that they're a bad person or there's something wrong with them or that they need to change who they are, because me, you, and everyone here, we have unconscious bias. It's just the way our brain is made. It works like a computer. And so it's these spontaneous judgments that we make about people, places, or situations that we may or may not be familiar with. So our brain looks for these little mental shortcuts. And those mental shortcuts oftentimes are tied to an attitude or a stereotype that we may have about someone's gender, sexual orientation, religion, race, etc. And so our brain looks for something familiar in those little small snippets of information, oftentimes leaning on that stereotype of that bias, attitude. And it says, oh, I know everything I need to know about this person based on X, right? So here I am, a Black woman, short crop, platinum hair. Of course, platinum is not my natural color. It's probably very gray now. I will never know. I refuse to find out. And someone may have a perception about someone like me, right? Just based on my physical appearance. But then they get to talk to me. They get to spend time with me. They get to learn who I am as a person, personally and professionally. And then all of a sudden, those biases start to kind of fade away. But until we build that relationship and that relational and social capital, we lean on bias to help us make those decisions.
Yeah. So basically, our brain can only process so much so fast, and so we lean into the buckets that we know. So what are some ideas about how to remove that from recruiting? If we're out there recruiting, it's going to be operating. So what do we do?
Well, self-awareness is key. I think understanding, again, as I said, understanding and accepting, more importantly, that we all have a bias. And it could be a good thing or a bad thing, right? It just really depends on the situation. So there are certain biases that are predominant in recruiting. So you have like the halo effect, the horn effect, like similarity, a similarity. You have these different types of biases that will play into decision making where, oh, this person reminds me of myself. So as a result, I'm probably going to score them more favorably on a scorecard, or I'm going to be more inclined to hire them because we have something in common, versus someone who maybe worked at a former company that you don't have a good feeling about, or maybe you didn't like working there. And so you don't trust anyone who comes from that company. I've had one hiring manager tell me that they didn't want to hire this person because they had the same name as their ex-boyfriend. And so as a result, she would oftentimes think about her ex-boyfriend when she would think about, talking to this individual. And I was like, that's not a reason not to hire him. So, those types of things. Again, these are types of bias that come up. It could be, affinity bias based on the school they went to, or maybe even a former employer. Oh yeah, I like recruiting from, Tana M Session.com because I know people who work there. I work there. We had a great experience. It's collegiate. And as a result, I'm going to pull that person in because I'm familiar with them, right? An affinity bias. So understanding when those biases come in, having others that can help you check your bias. So understanding it's important to get the perspective of others. That's why I like interview panels. That's why I like using scorecards as ways to really minimize the likelihood that bias will be there, but also hold people accountable and have some sort of checks and balances in place to see when is bias kicking in, and then what is that bias, and is it valid or is it a fallacy?
I have a question for you. This came up on a LinkedIn Live I did yesterday. Someone in the audience had asked, she said, we're trying to build a diverse workforce. We don't have a very diverse workforce right now. So when we bring in candidates that don't look like the people who work here, we fear that, they're going to see this panel and clearly we're not diverse. But so how do you offset that? Or, how do you, and I guess I recognize one answer is we got to get that person in, and then maybe if they can join the panel, if it makes sense for their role. But I don't know. I'm just curious, how do you get over that hump of like, okay, we're starting to get more diversity in here?
Yeah. And so first, I always wonder when people say we want to hire more diverse candidates, the first thing I ask is, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because it's going to mean something different for every organization, and maybe even for the individuals who are desiring to do so. Diversity for them may mean, oh, I want people who don't look like me physically, right? So if I identify as a white male, I want to bring in more women. I want to bring in more people of color. If it's, someone on the opposite end, they may want to say, oh, well, I want to bring in people that, have different background, different experiences, because diversity goes in so many, it's so wide and deep, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first part, is understanding what does diversity mean for you, because this is a word we've been using pretty heavily, especially over the last 2 years. But what do we mean? Because you have to be intentional with it. And then addressing the elephant in the room. So if you realize, and I've had this happen several times when clients reach out to me and I'm sitting before their virtual leadership team and I'm the only person of color, and the CEO will say, looking around, we're not very diverse, but we realize that we have to do better, and we're being very intentional. And this is why we're having these conversations now, because that says, you know what, they addressed the elephant in the room. I was just with a client last week, and a CEO stood up in front of the entire organization of leaders. It was like all of their managers there, and this leadership development, conference. And he has shown a slide of all of their new managing partners, I believe it was, and they were all white men. And before we went into my part of the session, he came out and talked to me, and he said, I feel like I need to address that, because I'm sure it's on people's minds, and we just kind of glossed over it. And I said, and you should. And when he did, it changed the entire dynamic of the meeting, because so many people said, oh my goodness, like, yes, I did think that. I was like, how are we talking about diversity and that group's not diverse, right?
Yeah.
So having those honest conversations is part of the challenge as well. How comfortable are you being uncomfortable? Because that's going to take the work. That's where the work is going to start. And then having these courageous conversations about it. And then also identifying what steps are you going to take to bring in not just diverse talent, but ensure that they feel included and they belong when they're there. Because the diversity part is easy. You can get them in, you can recruit, you can post on all these job boards. But if they get there and they feel like the culture's not fit for me, I don't feel included, I don't feel valued, I don't feel psychologically safe, they will leave.
Right. Yeah. And I hated during Black Lives Matter, when it was when it was really going on recently, that, it's been going on for a long time, but that I would get, these CEO emails. I was joking that all the CEOs went to the CEO store, and bought the template.
Yep.
I care about this.
Oh,
we
yeah.
need to do better. But unless you're really showing that you actually want to address it, you're making it worse. I feel like leave it as is if you're not wanting to actually care about this. And so I was worried about that. How do you help people feel included? So let's say my team, for example, admittedly, we're all white. We all look white. We're not all white. We all look white. So how do let's say I bring in a person of color, or we're all females, we're all straight. What if I bring in someone from the LGBTQ community? What can we do to make sure that they feel comfortable and included and psychologically safe?
Yeah, well, that's going to come in their interactions, right? So the relationships that they have with people there, the communications, are they using inclusive language? Does the individual feel they can be their true, authentic self?
Mhm.
I've early in my career, and I've had my hair like this for 24 years now.
I
Um,
love it, by the way, not that it matters.
Thank you. And I remember I interviewed with a company pretty early on when I first cut my hair and bleached it. And I had it was the HR director of this real estate firm in New York. I won't say who it was. And they asked me what I would consider changing my hair. And I thought about it because I really wanted to work for this company. It was a big brand name company. And I just thought, wow, this would be great for my career. And in the meeting, I did say yes. I said, yeah, I would consider it, but it just made me feel icky.
Mhm.
And when I went home and told my husband about it, he was my fiance at the time. He said, "Why would you want to change who you are to work for a company?" And I thought, "Duh, right?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think if I had gotten that job, let's say I didn't, which is a good thing. But if I had gotten that job and I did have to, let's say, wear a wig or grow my hair out or go back to my natural color, I would feel like I was losing a piece of my identity as a result of
Mhm.
it. So I won't feel like I'm included because I had to assimilate. I had to change pieces of who I am. I couldn't be my true authentic self. So no, I don't feel safe. Right.
Mhm.
So that's the journey there, is to understand, like, are we using inclusive language? Are we showing that we value who they are, every single piece and component, because we're complex creatures as humans?
Mhm.
Are we wanting to learn about their experiences, and not only learn about their experiences, but show up as allies for them in opportunities where we have power, privilege, and influence of change to do so?
Mhm.
Those are all the things that are going to help people feel included and ultimately that they belong.
Yeah, and it's real easy for you to say it and real hard. We all know that. I see lots of
Yeah.
comments coming through, so let's see what we got here. We've
Right.
and I'm gonna say names, but by all means, I apologize if I'm saying it wrong. Is it IMO? As a former candidate on the market, I loved being interviewed by the panels and encouraged business clients with Mama's HR consulting firm to have panel interviews as well. We have inclusion before diversity or vice versa. That's a good question. That's from Maria. Inclusion before diversity or vice versa.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I've seen it both ways, right? And there's so many new letters being added to the acronym, like DEIB, DEIBJ. I mean, it's
So
DEI,
many.
DEIA. I mean, so many, right? And what I say is you can do them all in parallel, right? So you don't have to choose one or the other. So the inclusion part, to me, that says you're working on your culture and you're ensuring that any policies, practices, systems, infrastructure, talent management, talent performance, recruiting, onboarding, exiting, all of these things are being viewed through the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. That should be happening regardless if you're recruiting diverse talents. The
Mhm.
diversity part can happen in parallel. If you're being intentional about it, it's going to take a little longer because that means you're going to recruit from different areas. You're going to have to build relationships with different associations or schools or
Mhm.
individuals, even, to encourage them to come through your funnel and then ultimately hire them and bring them on board. When they get there, they should feel the work is being done. That should be part of their lived experience. And if it's not, then you're missing the mark. So you can say diversity and inclusion or inclusion and diversity, whichever way you want, but the work should all be happening in tandem.
I like that. And so, yeah, somebody may join your organization and not feel totally included at the moment, but if they can see you're working in that way, then that's okay. That makes sense. Thank you for that answer. Let me see. So Maria says, sometimes I feel companies are eager to bring in diversity, but haven't set the foundation or had the conversations. All
Yeah.
right. All right. So, it's Elmo, as in Elmo, Catherine. I like how we're doing. Thank you for correcting how I said your name. So, any other final thoughts, comments for us?
Look, first, I'm glad to have this conversation. I told my clients I could talk about this stuff all day long. It probably drives my husband crazy because he overhears all my trainings and my meetings, and he could probably say this stuff in his sleep now too.
Yes.
But I love the work that I do, and I love the change and the transformation that organizations are, readily putting themselves up to do the work. And some are further along than others. I have clients all the time, they'll ask, What companies do you know have got it right? What companies do you know are like the gold standard? And I can't identify any. I can say that there's some that have done a really good job at doing the work. Like I like what Netflix has done. I'm a huge fan of the work over there under Vernay Myers. And then there are other companies that I can think about, on the financial industry side as well, that are very consciously aware of where their gaps are. They have been transparent with that in terms of demographic information on their website with investors and employees to help hold themselves accountable. And they're committing the resources. And if you don't commit the resources, then I have to question how serious are you about this work? And your resources are going to be your people, your time, and your money.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you for that. That was a great way to end it. Thank you again. We can find you at TanaMSession.com. Is that right?
Tana,
okay.
TanaMSession.com.
Wait, say it again. Tana.
Yep.
Tana. Okay, sorry. I got nervous when I was about to say it because I want to make sure I said it correctly.
I slow it all the time too. It's okay.
Yeah. And thank you so much again. I'm so thrilled that you took some time for me, one of your new big fans. And obviously people connect with you on LinkedIn. Watch, you have how many LinkedIn learning courses?
I have one course right now, and we're in development stage for a second one.
Okay. It's a fun ride to be on LinkedIn, isn't it? Thank you so much. Thanks all for listening. Have